Thomas Harvey is the Justice Project Director at the Advancement Project National Office. He joins us by Skype from Los Angeles. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. I want to ask you initially about your reaction to the verdict.
I would echo the sentiment of the people who are in Minnesota who are grateful for this moment, but also know that there's nothing about this verdict that's going to prevent someone else from being murdered by the police. There's nothing about this verdict that's going to systemically change police. The only thing that I think activists are calling for and organizers are calling for is defunding the police towards abolition of police. And that's really the position that everyone in this moment should be taking, because otherwise we will just continue to see on a daily basis the murder of Black, brown, and poor people by the police in the United States.
So when you talk about the defunding of the police, do you mean reallocating of resources, or do you mean abolishing the police system?
Well, defunding is the reallocation, and then I think it's a tactic and a tool that organizers are using to move towards the complete abolition of policing in the United States. But as a first step, there's an important moment where we need to recognize that even the most reasonable person who may support police officers can see that police officers and cops are asked to do things that even they don't think of their responsibilities. They do not address what we call serious or violent crimes in the United States. I think only 7% of the what we call crimes in the United States that police address are considered to be violent. They spend most of their time policing what we would call order incidents, people who are houseless, people who are accused of trespassing, people who have expired license plates, things that really have nothing to do with public safety in general. But that's what police spend all of their time doing. And as a very first step towards a world without police and prisons, we can, at the very least, remove them from those responsibilities and provide people the resources they need to avoid that contact with the criminal legal system.
So, and President Biden is renewing the push for the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. How much difference would that make, do you think?
It would have made no difference for George Floyd. There's nothing about the ironically named George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that would have prevented his death. It wasn't about racial profiling. It wasn't about a no-knock raid. It didn't come as a result of the lack of data transparency. It's not about leftover military equipment. There's just nothing in that act that would have prevented his killing. And so I think it is typical of Democrats and Republicans in the United States to respond to a demand that was to defund the police that came out of the largest uprising we've had since the 1960s in the United States. And to say, not only will we do nothing in this act that would have prevented the murder of George Floyd, but also we will allocate $750 million to policing across the United States. It's in direct contradiction to the main demand from organizers and protesters from last summer.
What about the investigation that's being promised by the Attorney General? And he's also talked about the lack of trust between communities and law enforcement, at least addressing apparently that side of things. Is that at least a place to start, do you think?
I suppose it's a welcome first step. I think people in Minnesota are right to be skeptical about this. I was in St. Louis when Mike Brown was murdered, and we watched the DOJ come in, and very few people remember this, but on the same day they released their well-known study of the Ferguson municipal courts. They also said that Darren Wilson had not violated Mike Brown's civil rights when he killed him. That was used by then prosecutor Bob McCulloch to justify a non-indictment. And then subsequently, the so-called progressive prosecutor who took his place, Wesley Bell, used the same information to not criminally prosecute Darren Wilson. So I think the DOJ is a mixed bag at best. I mean, keep in mind, when the Department of Justice came to Ferguson in 2014 or 2015, there were 600,000 arrest warrants in a region of 1.2 million people. And there were 3.5 arrest warrants in Ferguson for each family. And the response from the DOJ was to give more resources to the police, to give them more money and give them more training. We're way past that. So anything that the DOJ would do now, I hope would be much more aggressive than that. But you can never expect the Department of Justice to support something like the abolition of policing or defunding the police. And Vanita Gupta, who's been nominated, is on record as saying she doesn't support it. So, and that's one of the best candidates we could ever imagine to run that department. So I would be skeptical. And I would also, counsel that one of the impacts of the Department of Justice coming in is that it takes the wind out of the sails of movements and organizers, because they're invited to a table to talk about things, and then they are excluded from the inner workings between the DOJ and the police department they're investigating. So there's a lot to be paying attention to with respect to the DOJ coming in.
Thomas Harvey, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you.